Is this the most cursed opera ever created? For 150 years, a dark legend has surrounded the opera Carmen, a superstition that claims the lives, careers, and sanity of those who dare to bring its tragic heroine to life. This chilling tale of unexplained mysteries and onstage disasters began with the death of its own composer, just 3 months after its premiere. And in the century and a half since, the body count has never stopped. The first omen, Georges Bizet poured his soul into Carmen, finishing the last note in the summer of 1874. But his masterpiece seemed to be draining the life from him. Friends reported a chilling transformation. The once vibrant composer looked gray, jittery, a man already haunted by the very music he had birthed. The Paris premiere on March 3, 1875 was a disaster. The audience was polite but cold, and the critics savaged the work, calling the groundbreaking music obscene and the gritty, realistic plot too real. Bizet was crushed, muttering that he'd created a total failure. He walked home through the cold Paris rain and died of a sudden heart attack on June 3rd, exactly 3 months to the day after opening night. He was only 36 years old. The first person to sense this tragedy was Célestine Gallimarié, the mezzo-soprano who first gave voice to Carmen. In a moment of terrifying psychic dread backstage at the Opéra Comique, she suddenly clutched a fellow singer and whispered, "He's gone." At that precise hour, Bizet lay cold in his apartment a mile away. Gallimarié, shaken by the supernatural occurrence, never sang the role in Paris again. She told reporters the music left a taste of cemetery lilies in her mouth. With that, a terrifying superstition was born: touch the role of Carmen and you touch death itself. But this was only the beginning of the curse's reign. The card of spades. This real-life horror story for the opera world has a chilling echo within the show itself. In Act 3, the fiery Carmen reads her own fate with a deck of tarot cards. She deals herself the ace of spades, the death card, and instead of recoiling, she smiles and shrugs. If it's my turn, it's my turn. Audiences assumed this dark fatalism stopped at the curtain. But then, singers began noticing the very same card turning up in the most unsettling places. Deep in dressing room drawers, tucked ominously into costume pockets, or slipped silently under hotel doors on tour. It could be a coincidence, of course, or a prank by the chorus. Yet sopranos and mezzos speak of it the way sailors speak of a red sky at morning. It is a chilling omen, a warning you heed, or you drown. The next in line. As the opera's fame grew, so did the curse's power. Emma Calvé, the magnetic French diva who took over the role, was the next target. During one performance, a prop dagger snapped mid-fight, the blade bouncing and missing her eye by less than an inch. A true professional, she finished the night, but her throat was rattling with blood from a severely bruised vocal cord. The injury forced her into 4 weeks of complete, terrified silence. Calvé would later write, "Carmen does not like to be shared, she demands tribute." The curse was far from finished. The legend followed the opera to Buenos Aires, where, in one version of the story, Italian mezzo Ada Adini collapsed on stage during the dramatic final duet. Doctors tried to blame the altitude, a common issue, but the chorus whispered something else, that the curse had struck again. Adini survived the incident, but her life fell apart. Her marriage ended within a week of the collapse, and her famous high notes, the core of her career, never fully returned. She was forced to retire and become a teacher, where she offered a stark warning to her pupils: accept the role and you accept her cards. What happened next would take the curse from the opera house to the silver screen, with devastating results. The Hollywood Heartstopper. By 1915, the Carmen Curse crossed the Atlantic and found a new home in the burgeoning world of Hollywood. The legendary Metropolitan Opera star Geraldine Farrar was cast in a new silent film version, directed by the great Cecil B. DeMille. This was a haunted production from the start. Filming on location in the Mojave Desert, temperatures soared to a blistering 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Farrar, committed to her art, danced barefoot on scorching salt flats, slicing her soles open, yet still delivered a smoldering, iconic performance. The film was a blockbuster, making Farrar the world's first cinema sex symbol and an international superstar. But this triumph was overshadowed by a horrific tragedy that cemented the Carmen Curse in Hollywood history. At the film's star-studded premiere, her own father died suddenly in his seat from a cerebral hemorrhage. Farrar, devastated, completed her contracted season, then exited the role forever. She hauntingly told reporters, "I felt him leave during the habanera." The final chord was his requiem, a mid-century reckoning. Decades later, post-war Paris tried to laugh off the curse as a foolish old ghost story. When the celebrated soprano Régine Crespin signed on for the 1959 Aix-en-Provence festival, journalists teased her about jinxes over champagne. The curse, it seems, did not appreciate being mocked. On opening night, a ferocious mistral wind tore through the open-air theater, toppling the heavy metal scenery and crushing Crespin's foot. In an act of unbelievable bravery, she sang Act 4 seated on a bar table, her leg in a plaster cast, her veins pulsing with painkillers. The resulting live recording immortalized her legendary Carmen, but she refused to ever stage the role again. "She bit me," Crespin quipped with dark humor, "and would not let go." Let's take a quick pause. If these true scary stories and unexplained mysteries have you on the edge of your seat, prove you're not superstitious by hitting subscribe to Opera Brownn and ringing that notification bell. I uncover a new dark legend or historical mystery every week, and because of the YouTube algorithm, a subscription is the only way to guarantee you won't miss an upload. Your support for Opera Brownn truly keeps the channel alive. No ace of spades required. The Russian roulette. Even the Soviet Union, which championed Carmen as a parable of capitalist decay, could not escape its supernatural grip. In 1978, the great Bolshoi star Irina Arkhipova was struck down with a case of laryngitis so severe she could only communicate by writing notes. In a terrifying twist, she scribbled her messages on the backs of the very prop cards used in the fortune-telling scene. Her last written words before collapsing were, "Death is in the deck tonight." Doctors officially attributed the collapse to viral encephalitis, but rumors swirled through the company about poisoned bouquets sent by a jealous rival. Arkhipova eventually recovered, but the curse demanded a price. Her understudy, a vibrant young singer, dropped dead of a stroke at just 34 years old the following month. The American triple. The 1980s unleashed a brutal trifecta of American tragedies, confirming for many that the curse was more active than ever. First, the beloved mezzo Tatiana Troyanos fainted in the middle of an aria at the Lyric Opera of Chicago. Subsequent medical tests found the cause, a malignant brain tumor. In an incredible act of defiance, she fought back to sing one last triumphant Carmen in 1993, dying within a year. The tragedy didn't end there. Just days after her final bow, the baritone Jean-Philippe Lafont, who had played her lover Escamillo, crashed his motorcycle into a Paris underpass. The chain of disaster continued when rising soprano Mariella Adani, who was slated to replace Troyanos, lost her fiancé to a horrific hotel fire during rehearsals in Naples. The modern spell. Entering the 21st century, some hoped the curse had faded. They were wrong. In 2010, London's Royal Opera House built a major new production around the volcanic Georgian mezzo, Anita Rachvelishvili. Critics hailed her as the Carmen of a generation, but she felt a sinister presence. "Every night I could smell cigarette smoke where no one smoked," she said. "I'd wake at 3 a.m. to the sound of castanets in my hotel corridor." Then came the string of accidents. A painful ankle fracture from a simple stair exit, a sudden onstage nosebleed that spattered the front row, and a vicious paparazzi ambush that exposed private emails and ended her engagement. She still sings Carmen, and is arguably today's definitive interpreter, but now she arms herself with protective rituals, knocking on wood between every act, carrying her grandmother's amber beads for protection, and refusing to even look at the score on Sundays. The numbers game. So, is this curse statistically real, or is it just a collection of terrifying anecdotes? It's a difficult question, as opera houses don't keep an official log of misfortunes by role. However, a 2022 survey by the industry magazine Bachtrack uncovered a shocking statistic. It found that mezzos who list Carmen in their repertory report 41% more injury-related cancellations than their peers who sing other comparable dramatic roles. Is this just a coincidence? The result of confirmation bias? Or is it something darker? The dataset is small, and the variables are many, yet the pattern persists like a low menacing drone under the opera's famous overture. The psychology of possession. Could there be a scientific explanation for this terrifying phenomenon? Therapists who work with elite performers have a theory. They note that the role of Carmen demands a dangerous psychological tightrope walk. A singer must fully embody a woman who seduces, dominates, and ultimately welcomes her own violent death, all while maintaining flawless vocal technique. This intense blend of seduction, contempt, and surrender can trigger dissociative states in performers. Singers describe an out-of-body experience, watching from the wings as their body moves to Bizet's inescapable rhythms. When you add the whispering backstage culture and the persistent legend of the curse, the brain's threat detection system can go into overdrive. Fight-or-flight adrenaline floods the vocal cords, making injuries not just possible but probable. In short, the unwavering belief in the curse may be the very thing that manufactures the disasters it predicts. Before we reach the final, chilling showdown of our story, here is your second reminder. If you enjoy untangling history's spooky threads and diving into dark legends with opera Brownn, smash that like button. And tell me in the comments, if you had the voice, would you risk singing Carmen for a shot at operatic immortality? Or would you leave the cards undealt? The contemporary close call. Even today, the curse's shadow looms. Soprano Clementine Margain, today's go-to Carmen from the Vienna State Opera to Tokyo, keeps a private journal of mishaps that read like a log of supernatural attacks. A cracked rib from a stage fight gone wrong, a serious taxi collision on the way to a dress rehearsal, and even a conductor suffering a heart attack on her opening night. Publicly, she chalks it all up to the law of probability in a demanding career. Privately, she admits to precautions. She won't keep tarot cards in her apartment and religiously schedules vocal rest on every June 3rd, the anniversary of Bizet's lonely death. "I don't believe in ghosts," she laughs, "but Carmen believes in me." The composer's rebuttal. Of course, rational scholars argue there's a logical explanation for where it all began. They contend Bizet's early death had more to do with his chronic depression, a severe case of tonsillitis, and the damp, unhealthy Parisian climate than with any supernatural reckoning. They point out that tragically high death rates from heart disease among men in their 30s were distressingly common in the 1870s. Yet even the most hardened rationalists must concede that narratives have power. The Carmen Curse functions like a self-winding watch. Once the mainspring of Bizet's shocking demise was coiled, each new tragedy, each unexplained event, only tightened the mechanism, giving the legend more and more energy. The unanswerable question: so what is the truth? Is the Carmen Curse a real malevolent force? Or is it just a century-and-a-half-long coincidence wrapped in the drama and superstition of the opera world? The hard evidence is anecdotal, the statistics are thin, but the stories keep landing like the final shocking chord of the opera, sharp, unresolved, and echoing through time. Perhaps the answer lies not in facts or figures, but in the palpable darkness of the auditorium, where spectators lean forward, half hoping the curtain will part on another tragedy, and half fearing it will. From Georges Bizet's last lonely heartbeat to today's sopranos checking their horoscopes before a rehearsal, the role of Carmen continues to demand payment in more than just applause. It demands a tribute of broken bones, broken hearts, and broken voices. Whether you call it a curse, a coincidence, or a powerful psychological spell, the legend endures because it feeds on the very lifeblood of opera, a consuming passion that flirts dangerously with death. So the next time that famous overture starts and the cards are dealt on stage, remember, the ace of spades is already in the deck, waiting patiently for the next hand bold enough to claim it.